At the grand opening of her $1.5 million flagship office in Manhattan, everything was perfect until her stepmother took the mic. In front of business partners, journalists, and flashing cameras, Veronica smirked and said, "No matter how successful she is, she'll never be real family." The room fell into stunned silence. Ava Harper didn't flinch. She smiled politely, nodded graciously, all while clutching her designer handbag where a voice recording and confidential legal documents were ready to burn down the facade of the perfect Harper family. If that opening shocked you, trust me, it only gets wilder. Like, comment, and subscribe if you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family. Ava's story might just heal you. Ava Harper wasn't just any entrepreneur, she was a force of nature in fashion tech. As the founder and CEO of Harperware Inc., Ava turned smart fashion into a multi-million-dollar industry. But behind her poised success was a lifetime of being treated like a second-class citizen in her own home. Born from her father's first marriage, Ava had lived with her father's stepmother, Veronica, and half-brother Dylan since she was 8. While Dylan was coddled and spoiled, Ava was handed chores, silence, and guilt. "You're lucky we took you in," Veronica would whisper with a smile that never reached her eyes. Even after building an empire on her own merit, Ava found herself guilted into buying a house and a luxury car, not for herself, but for Dylan, the golden child who had never held a job longer than 2 months. And when the family tried to plant him as co-CEO, Ava began to realize this wasn't just family dysfunction. This was manipulation, and maybe something much darker. Ava's painful memories resurfaced childhood neglect, backhanded comments, and the day she realized love in her family always came with a price. Ava was only 8 when she moved into the Harper estate. A sprawling house that looked perfect from the outside, but behind its polished doors, she quickly learned her place. Veronica. Her stepmother didn't waste time making her feel like an outsider. "You're just visiting here," she'd say, with a thin smile, handing Ava a mop, while Dylan watched cartoons with his cereal on a silver tray. At first, Ava tried harder. She cleaned the house, helped Dylan with his homework, stayed invisible when guests came over. But no matter how much she tried to please, she was always left out. Birthday parties planned, without her family portraits where she was told to take the photo, not be in it. "You're not really one of us," Dylan once muttered, and she believed it. Her father, he was present but distracted, a quiet man who avoided conflict and never questioned Veronica's decisions. When Ava tried to speak up, she'd be told she was being ungrateful. "We've given you a roof over your head," Veronica would snap. The implication was always clear. Her place in the house was conditional. Ava turned inward. Books became her sanctuary, technology, her escape. She taught herself how to code by 12, designed her first prototype wearable by 15, and launched a crowdfunding campaign at 19 that raised over $600,000. That success could have changed things, but it didn't. If anything, it made her more useful to them. The request started small. Veronica asked if Ava could help pay for Dylan's college application fees. Then it escalated. When Dylan dropped out of college a year later, they asked Ava to invest in his future by buying him a Tesla Model X. "He's just lost right now," Veronica insisted. "Be a good sister." Ava bought the car. Then came the house, a $950,000 two-story in Connecticut, so Dylan could have space to focus. When Ava hesitated, Veronica guilted her again. "You owe us, Ava. We supported you when your mother left you." What support, Ava wondered. The hand-me-down clothes, the emotional neglect. But she gave in, because part of her still wanted to belong. Still hoped that one day they'd treat her like family. Then came the corporate push. Harperware Inc. was booming, featured in Forbes, recognized at CES, worn by celebrities. And yet, Veronica's focus wasn't Ava's success, It was how Dylan could finally step up by being named Chief of Market Development despite his lack of experience qualifications or even basic attendance. "He's got the Harper name," Veronica said. "That counts for something." What stung the most wasn't the suggestion. It was that her father said nothing. Again. Ava was exhausted. She had funded their lifestyle, protected the Harper name, and still came home to cold shoulders and silent treatments. Her love was measured in dollar signs, her value in what she could give. But something in her began to crack. The requests started feeling more like commands, and for the first time she began to see what they truly thought of her, not as a daughter, not as a sister, but as a tool. She had spent years building something incredible, only to have it threatened by the very people who claimed to love her. And so Ava did something she'd never done before. She began to say no, quietly, cautiously, but it was already too late. Veronica and Dylan were circling, and they weren't used to losing control. Ava begins gathering evidence recordings, paper trails, and one shocking discovery that exposes the web of lies beneath the Harper legacy. The moment Ava started saying no, the dynamic in the Harper household shifted, but not in the way she had hoped. Instead of earning respect, her boundaries sparked rage. Veronica responded with cold disdain, accusing Ava of turning her back on the only family that cared for her. Dylan bombarded her with passive-aggressive texts, and her father stayed silent, as always. But something had changed in Ava, too. The more they pushed, the clearer she saw. These weren't just manipulative relatives, they were parasites feeding off her success. And now, she was ready to push back. Ava began documenting everything. It started with a late-night phone call from Veronica. "You will add Dylan to the board," she hissed. "Or, I swear I'll tell everyone you're not a real Harper." Ava hit record. The venom in her stepmother's voice wasn't new, but now it was proof. Over the next few weeks, Ava collected more. Emails from Veronica demanding money for Dylan's business expenses. Internal messages showing Dylan approving company spending on luxury gaming chairs and first-class flights to nowhere. He had been abusing his internship at Harperware, charging over $180,000 to the company account under vague categories like client relations and team morale. Worse yet, Ava found an encrypted email trail between Veronica and an external bank. After several nights of digging through financial records, she discovered something that made her blood run cold: a $450,000 loan taken out under her name. At first, Ava thought it was a mistake, but the paperwork was real, complete with her forged signature. Veronica had used her access to family documents to co-sign a personal loan, one that was quietly defaulting and accumulating penalties. The lender, a small bank Veronica's cousin worked for. It was a family cover-up one Ava had no idea she was a part of. Shaken but determined, Ava contacted her legal team and a private forensic accountant. It took 2 weeks, but they uncovered the full picture. Veronica had built a shadow fund under Ava's name, funneling money through fake vendors, one of which traced back to a P.O. box owned by Dylan. Still, Ava didn't act immediately. She waited, because she knew the Harperware annual board meeting was approaching, and with it, the perfect moment to reveal everything. In the days leading up to the event, Ava played her part well. She smiled at family dinners. Let Dylan brag about his future role as co-CEO. She even agreed to let Veronica handle some light PR for the board meeting. Meanwhile, her team was assembling an airtight case: audio files, bank statements, surveillance footage, and internal reports. Ava also hired a security firm to ensure everything went smoothly the day of the meeting, just in case. But fate added its own twist. The night before the board meeting, Ava received a voicemail from her father. He sounded nervous. "Veronica told me you're making a scene tomorrow." "Ava, don't burn bridges. This family gave you everything." He paused, then said something that stunned her. If you hurt Dylan's future, I can't defend you. He had made his choice, and just like that, Ava felt a peace she hadn't known in years. The next morning, she stepped into the sleek glass-walled boardroom of Harperware's New York headquarters, wearing a deep navy power suit. Her presence alone turned heads. Behind her were her legal advisor and two key shareholders she'd quietly won over in the past year. Veronica and Dylan were already there, smug, confident, unaware. Before we begin, Ava said calmly, I'd like to present a short review of recent internal matters that require your attention. The lights dimmed. The screen lit up. Slide 1, a ledger showing company funds diverted into shell accounts, labeled clearly unauthorized transactions. Intern period. Slide 2, a voice recording. Veronica's voice rang out across the room. You wouldn't be anything without this family. You owe us Ava. You think Harperware exists without our name. Slide 3, the forged loan documents highlighting her fake signature. The room fell silent. Dylan stammered. This is taken out of context. But Ava wasn't done. She opened a folder and calmly distributed printed statements to each board member detailing the forensic findings, legal memos, and her intent to pursue restitution. I didn't want to believe it, Ava said, her voice steady. But this isn't just manipulation. It's financial abuse. Fraud. And I won't let this company, my company, go down with it. Veronica stood up, red-faced, and shouted, This is a betrayal, you ungrateful little— Sit down, one of the board members said sharply. You're not on this board, and you're leaving now. Security escorted her out. Dylan tried to follow, but a representative from HR blocked him. We'll need to speak with you regarding the misuse of company funds, Dylan. His face went pale. The board voted unanimously Dylan was barred from any corporate role or influence. The loan case was referred to legal counsel, and Ava was officially reaffirmed as sole CEO and primary shareholder. She didn't smile. She simply nodded because she had known deep down it would come to this. But while she'd won the professional war, the emotional wounds were far from healed. Her father hadn't shown up. No message, no call, just silence. Ava confronts her father in a heartbreaking conversation and makes the most painful, powerful decision of her life. The boardroom victory should have felt like a triumph. Ava had just exposed a web of betrayal and reclaimed control over everything she had built from the ground up. But as the glass doors shut behind Dylan and Veronica, the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was emptiness. She looked around the room, half expecting her father to walk in late as always, maybe with some half-hearted apology. But he didn't come, and somehow that absence pierced deeper than all of Veronica's venom. Later that evening, the Harper estate was quiet, eerily so. Ava had requested one thing, a private conversation with her father face-to-face away from lawyers and boardrooms. She deserved that much, or at least she thought she did. When he finally arrived, he looked older than she remembered. Slower, smaller. But his eyes were still sharp, calculating behind a mask of weariness. He didn't say hello. Just, so, it's done. Ava nodded. You didn't come. I didn't want to get in the middle of something ugly, he replied. Middle, she asked, voice trembling. Dad, they forged my signature. They took out a loan in my name. They stole from me, and you think that's just something to stay out of? He sighed. Veronica told me you were exaggerating. And Dylan, he's just a kid. He's 29. Dad, she snapped, and he stole $180,000 from my company. You make millions, he muttered, looking away. And there it was, the final crack that split Ava's heart wide open. She realized then that her father didn't just fail to protect her, he never truly saw her. Not as a daughter, not as a survivor, not even as a human being separate from what she could provide. "I was never part of this family, was I?" she whispered. He looked up, startled. "Don't say that. But it's true," she continued, voice growing firm. "Veronica treated me like a maid and you let her. Dylan got everything, love, trust, freedom, and I got silence. And when I finally stood up for myself, you called it betrayal." Her father's jaw clenched, but he had no words. "I built Harperware," Ava said. "I kept this family name alive when all Dylan did was drag it through the mud. And still you chose him." He finally spoke. "He's my blood." Those 4 words shattered something inside her. Ava took a long breath. "So what does that make me?" He didn't answer. The silence was louder than any insult. Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the final realization that there was nothing left to fight for here. She had been chasing love and approval from a man who only ever saw her as a utility, a tool, a safety net for his real family. She stood up. "I'm done being your investment." "Ava!" he called out, but she didn't turn back. That night, Ava returned to her penthouse and sat alone on her balcony overlooking the skyline. The city lights below flickered like distant stars, cold and untouchable. For hours, she said nothing. No phone, no music, just the hum of silence and a glass of untouched wine in her hand. She replayed the years in her head, the birthdays forgotten, the apologies that never came, the manipulation masked as love. Every time she tried to earn their affection by overachieving, overgiving, overextending only to be met with expectation instead of gratitude. And now, it was time to stop bleeding for people who never even noticed she was cut. The next morning, she walked into the Harperware headquarters with new resolve. The office was buzzing with quiet rumors, bits of the board meeting leaking out like smoke from a fire still burning. Her assistant handed her a list of media requests, but Ava waved them off. She had one final announcement to make. She gathered the leadership team and longtime staff into the conference room. No suits, no formality, just honesty. "I want to thank all of you," she began, voice steady. "Not just for standing by me, but for believing in this vision when my own family didn't. And because of that belief, Harperware isn't just surviving, it's thriving." They clapped, but she raised her hand to quiet them. "And now it's time for a change. I'm transferring 20% of my personal shares to a new nonprofit fund supporting women-led tech startups from underserved communities. It'll be called the Outside In Fund, because I know what it's like to be the outsider. And no one with vision should be left behind simply because they weren't born into the right room." Gasps filled the room. Her board advisor looked stunned. "You're sure they asked?" "I've never been more sure," Ava replied. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about release. She had nothing left to prove, and everything left to build. With the dust settling, Ava makes her boldest move yet and redefines what family truly means. Ava didn't step foot into the Harper estate again. No lawyers, no reconciliation dinners. No, maybe it was just a misunderstanding. She had reached the edge, and for once she didn't fall. She walked away. In the weeks that followed, the boardroom reckoning and her bold donation, Ava took a rare pause. She stopped attending pitch meetings, let her assistant handle travel bookings, and took long walks through the quieter corners of Manhattan. Her mind, once buzzing with KPIs and investor decks, now turned inward. What did she really want? For the first time in her adult life, she wasn't chasing someone's approval. Not her father's, not the shareholders', Not even her younger selves need to prove them wrong. But if not revenge, then what? Ava found part of her answer in the most unexpected place, an old email buried under 1,000 unread ones. It was from Elise, a childhood friend she hadn't spoken to in years. Elise had been one of the few kind faces in Ava's early life before her stepmother demanded she cut off bad influences. The message was simple. Saw your name in the headlines. Just wanted to say, whatever you did, I'm proud of you. You always deserved better. It wasn't much. But it reminded Ava of who she used to be before titles, before trust funds, before she thought she needed to buy her way into belonging. They met for coffee a few days later. Elise, now a social worker, looked the same, warm, direct, grounded. Ava asked her, "How do you keep going when no one claps for you?" Elise smiled. Because helping someone else stand is its own kind of standing tall. That one sentence stayed with Ava like a steady heartbeat. That night, she looked at her company's long-term roadmap, AI integrated fashion, global retail expansion, IPO prep, and realized she didn't want more anymore. She wanted meaning. She picked up her pen and started sketching not a product, but a vision, a foundation. A place where young women like her, smart, underestimated, pushed to the margins, could build something without having to burn themselves down first. She called it Reclaim, a startup incubator. Run by women, funded by women, designed for girls who grew up just like her, silenced, sidelined, but burning with ideas. A week later, Ava scheduled a video call with her leadership team. On-screen faces that had followed her for years waited in silent anticipation. "I'm stepping down as CEO," she said. Gasps. Questions. Panic. She raised a hand gently. "I'm not disappearing. I'm evolving. Harperware is ready to scale without me, and I'm ready to help others rise." Some argued, others cried, but most smiled. They knew this was who she truly was, not just a leader, but a builder of leaders. Still, not everyone was happy. Her father sent a short text. "You're throwing it all away." "For what?" "A charity." She didn't respond. Instead, she reread the text and laughed. Not in bitterness, but in freedom. She had already given him everything. And now, for the first time, she was keeping something for herself. 3 days later, she signed the official transfer of her shares and booked a one-way flight to San Francisco, where Reclaim would begin. Before leaving, she stood once more in the now-finished lobby of the Harperware Tower. Her portrait still hung near the elevator. She touched the frame lightly and whispered, "I forgive you, Ava, for trying so hard to make them love you." Then she turned and walked away, heels echoing like a closing chapter. Ava's bold new path faces legal backlash and an unexpected plea from the very family who once tried to destroy her. Veronica wasn't done, or so she thought. Just weeks after Ava relocated to San Francisco and launched Reclaim, her stepmother filed a lawsuit claiming Ava had misused family funds to build Harperware and that she owed a share of the company's value to the Harper household. The legal jargon was messy, but the intent was crystal clear: control. Ava didn't panic. She handed the matter to her legal team, along with the same neatly labeled folders of evidence that had once stunned a boardroom: emails, voice recordings, financial records, every transaction and threat time-stamped and admissible. The court didn't need long. The judge dismissed Veronica's case entirely, citing a blatant lack of merit, and even suggested a countersuit for defamation. Veronica left the courtroom red-faced and empty-handed. Meanwhile, Dylan, already under internal audit pressure from Harperware's compliance team, found himself the subject of an official state investigation. The $180,000 he siphoned, traced, confirmed, and unrecoverable. In lieu of jail time, he accepted a plea deal, 18 months of community service, public restitution, and a permanent ban from corporate positions. The tabloids had a field day. Golden Boy Dylan Harper turns janitor at City Hall, one headline read. Photos of him scrubbing graffiti in an orange vest went viral. The contrast was delicious. As for Ava's father, he sent one final message, simply, "I didn't protect you. I'm sorry." She never replied. The silence was her answer. And while the Harper name faded from headlines, a new one began rising in bolder, brighter letters. The final chapter, how Ava rebuilt her own definition of family and the message she left behind for every woman who's ever been told she didn't belong. Ava never looked back. In San Francisco, she traded boardrooms for community hubs, pitch decks for passion projects. Reclaim became more than an incubator. It became a movement. Women from all walks of life walked through its doors with nothing but an idea and walked out with purpose, backing, and belief. She lived in a modest loft, designed her own clothes, and taught workshops barefoot. There were no staff calling her ma'am, no catered meetings, just real work with real impact. One afternoon, a young woman asked her, "How did you survive all that and still smile?" Ava paused. "I stopped confusing love with loyalty. I stopped letting people rent space in my life just because we shared blood." That night, she wrote in her journal, "Family is not where you're born. Family is where you're believed." She had finally drawn a line, not in anger, but in healing. And in that space beyond the line, she built a life that was finally hers. If Ava's journey moved, you share this story. Leave a comment, your voice matters here. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of strength healing and becoming who you were always meant to be.